Thank you all for coming to the second debate of this year's Black History Month 2019 Student Debate Series. My name is Don Williams, and I will be your debate moderator today. Today's debate: what educational trend has been more damaging to the African American experience? The perpetual mid-education of the African American students, or the disproportionate use of self-handicapping academic behaviors by African American students? Today's student debaters represent Mr. Bates' African American history class. We have two teams: Team Miseducation, this team over here, and the self-handicapping team, this team over here. Please give both teams a round of applause for working hard to prepare for today's debate. Thank you. Now we will start. Team Miseducation will now give their opening statement.
According to UNCF.org, African American students are often located in schools with less qualified teachers, teachers with lower salaries, and novice teachers. Another fact from that same website is that African American students are less likely to be college ready. In fact, 61% of ACT tested black students in the 2015 high school graduating class met none of the ACT college ready benchmarks. This is because the school cannot afford the materials and the teachers do not help prepare them. Our argument is that the perpetual mid-education of African American students is more damaging than the self-handicapping academic habits of African American students. When slavery was legal, most African Americans weren't even allowed an education. Even after, segregation made it so African Americans were put in separate, segregated, less upscale schools with lower skilled education. In fact, a quote by Susie King, who attended a secret school in Georgia, from americanhistory.si.edu says, "We went to school every day about 9 o'clock with our books wrapped in paper to prevent the police or white people from seeing them. After school, we left the same way. We exited one by one when we would go to school, at a square, a block from school, and wait for each other."
Thank you. Next, the self-handicapping team will give their opening statement.
Okay. Have any of you ever went home and just didn't feel like studying your homework? Raise your hand if you have. No, so like half of y'all are lying, because I know everyone does that. Or do you ever like sleep in class or not pay attention just because you didn't want to? Or even just skip over the directions that's on your paper just because you don't feel like reading it when it clearly states what you have to do in the next thing. Oh goodness, because I do that like 99% of the time. Okay. So what is the meaning of self-handicapping academic behaviors? Well, it is when students themselves are the reason they are not being successful in school, that their own lack of trying and being lazy is affecting their education. The fault doesn't fall within the teachers or the school as a whole, but within the students themselves. So that's it.
Thank you. Yeah. Now, the Miseducation team will present their first point.
Lack of funding typically leads to a larger class size and less technology and curriculum materials. And the more students teachers have, the less the attention they give to each individual student. And this can also bring in beginner teachers that don't know what they're doing, like older and more experienced teachers. This can foster an atmosphere of discipline issues and start to establish a pattern. Most devastatingly, they start to shatter a student's confidence, and any issue will result in the loss of instruction time, which limits a student's learning potential.
Thank you. Next, the self-handicapping team will present their first point.
Teachers often face classrooms filled with students who are overly tired from staying up late on their phone or playing video games. According to CNN, teens who use any electronic devices before bed is usually associated with not only losing sleep, but also the quality of their sleep is affected. So like, let's say you're on your phone before you go to sleep, and then you try to go to sleep, but like once you wake up, you feel like you was only asleep for like 30 minutes. So, meaning, so that causes them to have excessive daytime sleepiness, like in class, like when you fall asleep in class, which doesn't fall within the school's fault because it's not their fault that you decided to stay up late on your phone or play the game with your friends. Also, the school does not provide your phones. They always tell us to take like 15 minutes out of our day and study instead of like texting because 15 minutes is like nothing when you spend like half your day on your phone. So students are spending more than 1/3 of their day using social media such as online video games, says WashingtonPost.com, which leads to saying it is proven that these youths waste 9 hours a day slacking off on their technology instead of studying or doing their homework, which is one of the important keys to being successful in school. So that's it.
Thank you. Now the Miss Education team will present their second point.
The miseducation of African American students is more damaging than disproportionate use of self-handicapping handicapping academic behaviors of African American students because according to Brookings Institution, the United States education system is one of the most unequal educational systems in the world. And African American students commonly receive dramatically different learning opportunities based on their social status. In contrast to European and Asian native nations that fund schools centrally and equally, meaning every school gets the same amount of money per student. Where in Michigan, we are funded on how many students attend the school. The wealthiest 10% of United States school districts spend nearly 10 times more than the poorest 10%. And spending ratios 3-to-1 are common within states. Despite obvious differences in funding, teacher quality, curriculum, and class sizes, the prevailing view is that if students do not achieve, it is their own fault. If we are ever going to get beyond the problem of the color line, we must confront and address these issues. Even so, educational experience for black students have continued to be greatly separate and unequal. 2/3 of African American students still attend schools that are predominantly African Americans. Most of them are located in central cities and funded well below those in neighboring suburban districts. Authors Asher and Branch Smith found that one of the factors that influences the systematic underachievement of black students in suburbia is the lack of caring teachers. The author argued that teachers often view their students as urban and therefore tend to associate them with all the negative connotations of urban, such as dangerous, disorderly, and unmotivated. Teachers' low expectations yield poor results. Police research in suburban Detroit confirms that this is also found that teachers generally lack a caring attitude towards their students and were uncertain about whether they can teach them successfully.
Thank you. Now the self-handicapping team will present their second point.
One self-handicapping example is that teens smoke a lot of weed. Therefore, this affects their ability to be successful in school. During this day and age, it's very hard to keep the use of drugs and alcohol out of the black youth communities. Schools and teachers can only do so much in a little amount of time they have with their African American students. They have no control over teens who wants to take drugs or drink alcohol outside of school. Research shows that there is a definite link between teen substance abuse and how well you do in school. www.justthinktwice.gov says that students who abuse drugs tend to have lower grades, a high absence rate from school, and an increased potential for dropping out of school. Teens who do stay in school that abuse drugs struggle with memory loss, short attendance span, and their ability to learn. www.bbc.com says the brain doesn't stop developing until your mid-20s or even early 30s. Therefore, if teens take drugs or drink alcohol before their brain is fully developed, they are most likely not to be successful in life.
Thank you. We will now have a 3-minute break for each team to prepare for the cross-examination part of the debate. Team self-handicapping will ask their questions first. Judges, please remember that the winner of the cross-examination gets 2 points. First up, team self-handicapping will have 5 minutes to ask questions to team miseducation about their arguments.
As said in y'all's second reason about our African American students not being provided with the necessary tools to assist in school, why is it like the schools, like, I don't know how to explain it. Why do the students need to be provided with everything by the school? Why can't they provide it for themselves? Like, can they not afford it? Like, that's not the school's fault that they can't do everything for the students because our students would have to compromise in between.
Do students buy textbooks?
Textbooks, no.
Do students buy rulers? Can all students afford that? It's a school's job to give the students what they need to learn, whether it's textbooks, whether it's pencils, whether it's homework. That's their job. The students can't afford that. I can't afford to buy the whole school textbooks. A lot of these kids cannot afford textbooks.
Most of our schools can't afford the textbooks either because they're not funded with
The schools don't have them. They're not funded. That's not the students' fault. That's on the school. That has nothing to do with the students. That's on the school.
Why do our students have to be obligated to be provided with everything?
The students aren't buying it. The school has to. The school gets funded by
The school doesn't have to buy the papers. They're not
So then
obligated
who
to buy
does?
the
If the
papers.
students can't afford them, then who does?
That's their own fault. What are you saying?
Exactly. It's on the school.
Their own. That's the kids' own fault. What are you talking
That
about?
they cannot
parents' fault.
afford their
Or
materials?
their parents' fault.
We're not
Yes.
talking about parents. We're talking about students.
Right, not
Wait.
right. And what comes with students? Parents.
We're not talking about
What
the
comes with
parents,
students?
Dustin. We're
What
talking
comes
about
with
the
students?
students.
What
The
comes with
teachers
students?
in the schools cannot afford the textbooks. Therefore, they cannot give the students the materials they need to learn. That's not the students' fault that they cannot afford them.
Yes, it is.
How?
Teacher needs to
Oh, please
provide the right
explain to
amount
me
of
how.
education for us.
You said what?
What did you say? I couldn't hear you. What did you
The
say?
teacher needs to provide us with the textbook so we can learn.
The teachers
That's
don't
the
even
school's.
provide it.
That's the whole school's job
The
to
district-
teach us. They
the
need to
district
provide us with the right
provides-
materials.
The district
They should be
provides
teaching us
materials.
to
the
be-
teachers doesn't do anything but teach.
I can't hear you. Can you speak into the mic?
They can teach us to
Oh, yeah.
afford
The
textbooks.
teachers don't do anything but teach.
The school. Okay, then the school. It's
That's the
education.
school's
Period.
The district
They need
provides
material
something.
to
The teachers
teach.
doesn't
Not
do anything.
always.
That's an
Dustin.
example of the school not
Right.
teaching us education.
Schools that do not have a lot of money, it is hard for them to provide books for the students. It's hard for the students to afford things. Not everybody has all that money to be affording textbooks every year.
Okay, so later on in high school, after high school, they will not be obligated to be provided with these things later on in life, so they need to be taught that they need to provide stuff for themselves, that life isn't fair and not everyone is going to buy everything for you just because you're a student at a school.
I'm 16. I'm not going to be able to pay for a textbook for 4 years. When I get older, I'm going to have a job. That's when I'll be able to afford. That's when you get classes that teach you how to do that, like banking and business. But right now, I don't have the money to be paying for that type of stuff.
And even
I'm
for
not
the-
that old yet. When we get older, that's when we learn. The teacher's job is to teach us, not to give to us like that. They can't tell us what to do like that. If we need textbooks, it's their job to afford them. Or the school district's job to afford them, not ours.
You know how you do high school. You buy your own college books.
Okay, our next question is, how are our students miseducated if we have a whole entire class that teaches us all about our African American history, but it is also taught by a white man?
I got that one. Wait, can you repeat that one more time?
I said, how are our students, our African American students, miseducated if we have an entire class that teaches us all about our African American history, but is also taught by a white man?
So wouldn't the school hire an African American male to teach that? And if they don't have the money then to afford an African American teacher to come teach that class, then again, I think that's on the school and their lack of money or thereof, correct?
But how did that lead to our miseducation if we have a whole class about it? We're still learning about it.
Because they haven't hired that teacher. They didn't hire that teacher. That's, again, I don't understand.
We're not talking about the teacher.
No, I'm not talking about the teacher anymore. I'm talking about how are we miseducated?
I'm not understanding.
Actually, you know what miseducation is. Actually.
Miseducation, like, are we not being taught it right? Like, do you know what miseducation is?
If you're not being taught it right, then that's the teacher's fault.
No, I'm asking.
I don't understand what you're saying.
Do you know what miseducation is?
Miseducation, yes,
Yeah.
not being educated the way you should, right? Leading in the different direction, going
Right.
that way.
And what we're trying to say is why you not saying what you're trying to say?
I am. I can be the one asking the question.
Huh?
I can be the one asking the question.
All right, time.
She trying to
That's it,
trying to
that's
get? She trying to get across like.
All right, look, time's up. Thank you. Everybody quiet down.
Why you didn't get your point?
Next, the miseducation team will have 5 minutes to ask questions to the self-handicapping team about their argument.
Wait.
How you gonna get your point across?
That's for the question.
Why you be holding?
Okay, so in one of your first points, you said the reason students aren't really self-handicapping because of their phones and technology all day. But phones and technology, we use them for like learning too, like in school. And plus materials for like us learning is on our phones, but that still isn't enough to teach us properly. So that's why we're failing.
So what's the question?
That was, I mean, holy shit. Here. How would the challenge be our fault? Be our fault as self-handicapped? Because we can learn from it. Like, how would the challenge be self-handicapped?
A lot of students know how to use their phones in a correct way. They should be able to grab the materials from their phones. Is that what you're asking?
Is she answering our question?
No, hold on.
Do you guys use your phones for school? And anyway, that's just the question. Do you guys use your phones for school at all?
Yes.
Just yes or no? You do?
Yes.
So I don't understand. You're using it towards school.
Do you be on your phone in school
Yeah,
while the teacher's talking?
sometimes. Yeah.
Thank you. No, I'm on tip now. You got my point across, didn't you?
And you did make them shut up.
You got my point across, didn't you?
So then you gotta ask that, because I don't know I don't get it.
So, I don't really understand, like, how would technology be against us when we use it, we learn from that. Like, we could learn from our phones, so how would that be against us?
I mean,
Because most of our students don't even use their phones to actually do the work. They'll sit there and act like they're on their phones, but when in reality they're actually texting or watching the basketball game from last night.
But like when we do do our works, like let's say for example you do that and you don't I guess we do look up what we're supposed to and not the texting or whatever you were talking about. And we still can't find like what we need to find. That would be education, right? That'd be the education's fault.
But you said if
No.
they're actually doing
Alright,
it, which
no, I'm
they're
saying,
not,
like-
which is their own faults, because they're too busy and they don't want to focus on school. They'd rather be on their phones instead of actually paying attention in class.
Next question.
Oh,
It might be room. Be serious. We only have 5 minutes. You know that. That's why I didn't get my question in, because you want the.
I told you to ask questions. We're shooting all of their questions down.
But if I would have asked my question, it would have been, oh shit, I'm telling you, bro, I'm telling you, I would have asked my question, bro. I can't ask my question. Dom. We can't ask more questions.
just ask it.
How much more we got?
Just
Do you think teachers? Okay, hold on, wait. Damn.
They asked one question?
That's like 3.
I should have asked my question. My shit was accurate. I would have hugged that. She was like,
That's what I'm saying. That's it. We ain't got nothing. That's crazy.
I should have asked them.
Oh, no.
I should have asked the question.
That's
They just wasting
crazy.
time? They just wasting time, I guess?
yeah, it's like 5 seconds.
Oh, is it time up? Time up.
Time up, bro. All right, thank you. Everybody focus. We will now have a 3-minute break for each team to prepare for the debate conclusion. Team Miss Education will present their conclusion first. Team Miss Education will now present their conclusion.
In conclusion, education for African American students deal with expulsion in high schools. According to theconversation.com, in high schools, black, white, my bad. Black boys and black girls are 4 times as likely to be suspended than white kids. According to theroot.com, for example, in Louisiana, black and low-income students are 13 and 9 percentage points more likely to be suspended in a given year than white kids who don't have low income. Data reveals that black students receive 4 more days of suspension than their white peers for the same exact infraction. These events also happened in 2017, so they're very recent. Some people call this situation school-to-prison pipeline, which proves the problems of racial inequality and criminal and justice systems, which begins in the educational system. For example, the U.S. Department of Education reports that 18% of black boys and girls received an out-of-school suspension in 2013 to 2014. Compared with only 5% of white boys and 2% of white girls, most would see that as white privilege.
Thank you. Thank you. Everybody focus. Quiet down. Team self-handicapping will now present their conclusion.
Technology, drugs, and alcohol are of your own decision. It's not the school's fault that you don't pay attention in school because you're up all night on Instagram, Facebook, or Snapchat. For the people who play games, you're up late at night playing games instead of studying to pass your test tomorrow. Drugs and alcohol, which cause your brain damage that makes it harder for you to think. Think straight. All these behaviors are your choice. It's what makes your grades bad, not the school. How many of you are or were on your phones right now? A lot of you, I bet.
Thank you. This ends our debate. Please give both teams a round of applause for working hard to prepare for today's debate. Thank you, thank you. Now we will give our judges a couple of minutes to complete their scoring to determine our winner. Once again, thank you all for coming to the second debate of this year's Black History Month Student Debate Series. Today's winner is Team Miss Education. Clap it up for him.